Okay, so I was asked to show like everything I use, like my setup to make knives. And I don't have like a designated area or nothing like that. I just have a lot of things that are portable. Um, but I thought of just probably like showing everything I use from like start to finish, and hopefully this won't be like a crazy long video. But I thought maybe that would be like the best, like most helpful way of doing things. So yeah, so I'll start with this first. Okay, so the first thing I use is just drawing paper. So this is 80 pounds, and that has to do with like the thickness of the paper itself. So what I like to use, it gives me enough stiffness on whatever I cut out, so that I can easily transfer it to a piece of steel. So for this, so I basically just drew out the thickness, or I mean the width of the steel I'm using, and so I can have like little parameters which I can't go past, and then I drew out whatever knife I wanted to. After that, I just get this, and I just put it on whatever piece of steel I'm going to use. And after that, I like to use magnets just to keep it in place. And then I just use a Sharpie to outline it. So a Sharpie, what I found is I like using these industrial super permanent ones. Um, these for, I mean, well, if you get just the normal ones, I use an angle grinder on the steel to actually cut it out, and it actually gets hot enough sometimes that the normal Sharpie will actually evaporate on certain spots, so which is kind of nuts. So this one tends to do a lot better, and then sometimes when I'm like putting it in water, stuff like that, when I'm actually grinding on the steel later on, and I'm dipping it in water to cool it down, things like that, this just sticks a lot longer. It keeps the outline or the drawing I'm making for just much better than the normal one. Um, this is just to cut out. So I use this just I like these kind of razors better than it's like box cutter, better than just the normal ones because it gives you a little bit more length. So what I do with this is let's say I'm like let's say this is a knife and I have like epoxy or whatever. I like to take off the epoxy first with the knife itself, this box cutter, and then after that, then I'll sand it away. So if you try to like sand away a glob of like epoxy, it takes an eternity. So this helps to cut out whatever drawings you have, but also to just basically do like little fine things, get rid of stuff that you need to get rid of. And the reason I use this instead of just a regular box cutter is because sometimes if you have a wide blade, you can't really get across with a little small one, and this one you can. So yeah, okay. So next up is just protection. Some type of eye protection, and then for sure respirator of some kind. I actually shaved. I used to have a beard. I actually shaved my beard just so I can use this because if you don't, you don't make a good enough seal so that this actually like prevents particles and stuff like that to from getting to you. So this is a P100, something like P95 to P100 is good. But yeah, so protection for sure. All right, so the next thing is just have like a sturdy table. I mean, that's what I have. And like I said, everything I use is portable. So what I do is I just basically put it on this table and use it and then take it off when I don't. So next up is basically clamp I clamp the steel, like let's say after I have a drawing of the knife I want, I clamp it to this table and then I cut it out with the angle grinder. I like to use these type of clamps. I do two, so it actually holds it in place, but just to show you, I like these that just, it basically just grabs straight. Um, Large ones are nice. These are 12. I've never needed anything more than 12 inches. I don't like these so much because when you get down, this is a C-clamp, when you get down to actually putting pressure on whatever you're grabbing, this twists and it tends to want to turn whatever material you're trying to clamp together. So these are nice. These work, and they worked for a lot of things for me. So after I have it like this, and you have to kind of imagine a drawing here, what I do is, and everything I have is cheapy, so you can see like Harbor Freight stuff from now on. Okay, basically, except one thing in the end. So this is the angle grinder I bought, and this is like for, I think like 50 bucks is what it cost me. These are just gonna be approximations of prices. On when I give you a price on something, it'll just be like approximation. So yeah, so I use just an angle grinder, this guy right here, and I cut out the form, and then I use just cutting wheels to cut it out, and then let me show you actually. All right, so this is just how the cutting wheel looks like, the one I use. So I just use this to cut out the shape of the actual like drawing I have of the knife, and I'll get as close as I can to the drawing. But eventually what you'll get a bunch of little jagged edges, because you can only go in at angles and you can't really follow those curves and all that stuff. So what I do afterwards is I'll go with one of these and just like a thicker piece that I can just smooth it out as much as I can and get it again as close as I can to the line. Here's a tip. I know it might be obvious, but just in case. So when you do draw, like let's say you have your knife and you have your piece of steel, have the point face the center of the steel that you're cutting, so that when you do cut it, you still have a portion of steel that you can use as part of your drawing, so for your next knife. So if I were to do this instead, so you see how far the knife goes, the point goes all the way to here. If I were to do this instead, I basically have to just cut this straight, so I no longer have this piece to use. So yeah, just something. Okay, so next up is this guy right here. So this is it's a 4x36, and I got it from Harbor Freight too. So what happened was I didn't know if I wanted to do knives or not. So I got just a bunch of cheapy stuff, and so far I've just kept them. I've just kept using them. So yeah, all right. The thing to this is I took off a bunch of stuff around it. So underneath I had like this plate to try to collect some of the debris or whatever that you took off material. And I had this little arm up here that would basically, once your tracking went off and came to the right, it had like this metal piece that went over the top, and it would just shred your belt. So I took that off completely, and so just to make this easier to take off the belt too, I had this like little cover in the back too, so I took off all that stuff, just left like this bare, and it's easier just to put on and take off belts. This thing right here, this thing I think is supposed to go where the circular sanding portion of this is supposed to be. I don't even use that, but I put it here so I can just put this completely vertical, and then just put this up against here, and then just do a nice 90-degree angle on the sides of the knife. The problem with this thing is, so first of all, it is like way underpowered. It doesn't have that much strength. And if you do put pressure on this, it doesn't even have to be a lot of pressure, it will stop. So when you're doing like CPM 3V, it will take you hours and hours to reduce a piece down to where you want it. Just because you can't, even though you have a nice belt or whatever, this is a ceramic belt, a Cubitron or whatever ceramic belt. It'll take you a super long time just to reduce it down, because you can't put that much pressure, because this will slow down, like it will just completely stop. The other thing is, it's hard to get a nice clean, if you want a clean grind line from where you start. It's hard to actually do that on this, because this thing keeps moving. So as soon as you put pressure here or here, it'll start tracking to one side. So that's another negative there. But once again, you can grind it, and then let it go back, or adjust it. But one of the things you can do too is just use a file to just start off your grind line, and then just keep going over it as you progress with the rest of the stuff, and that'll keep it like clean. So, and I'll talk about some other things, some other disadvantages thing has too. Okay, so I was able to make this knife using this grinder, and the way I was able to get these these curves and stuff is I just use like the arc of this wheel here to grind it out. Kind of a pain, and this is CPM 3V, so same thing. I couldn't use too much pressure and stuff like that, but I was able to do all this stuff because of this thing, just because of this roundness you have here. But if you want to do anything else smaller, you can't really do it with this. Any tighter curves, you can't really do it with this machine, and I'll show you what I use for that too. Okay, so next up, before I show you the next piece of equipment, so I bought this other machine because of this Chris knife that I wanted to make. This thing is too wide, so I mean, to make something like this, it would just be too wide for me to actually do it. So it's just I got it started with this. So I did get like these first curves started with this grinder, but I had to get another thing to actually finish it, to actually do it right. And what I got was, and this is like probably like the nicest machine that I actually bought specifically for knife making. So this is a Makita, and it's a 3/8 by 21 inch, and it's talking about this little belt here. So with this thing, you can do, and this is what I used to make handles too. So you can do contours and handles. You can do like the Chris knife. You can do the curvatures on the Chris knife. You're gonna go through a ton of belts if you do CPM 3V with this machine, simply because it'll waste them like super quick, and then once it does, it just starts heating up your material a lot faster. Same thing with handles. I did the contours on this one using this Makita machine. And one of the things you have to watch out for is, because if you do let this wear out and it gets too hot, your material gets too hot, you will actually burn your wood handles, your micarta handles, or I don't know about G10, to tell you the truth. I've only used like black G10. So it will burn materials, stuff that you're using, if you lose friction on this thing, and if it gets worn down too much. So yeah, so this thing, beautiful, like super nice. I wanted something with a lot of torque, something that I mean, if I'm going to use it for like thick pieces of steel, I wanted something that was good. I couldn't really cheap out on this, because I didn't want something that would bog down like I'm actually using it. Something this small. For sure, I think if I would have bought some variation, some cheaper variation of this, what would happen is it wouldn't have enough torque. It wouldn't just have enough like everything I need, enough power to do the things I wanted to do. So yeah, this guy. Okay, so next up is the drill press, and the belt grinder I have is like $80. I forgot to mention that, and this thing's like around $80 too. And so yeah, this is same thing, Harbor Freight, and it's actually really good. I haven't had too many problems. I had to put tape on this thing because I would use it, and this thing would just twist around. It would just like move around. This for the light. So all of a sudden, like the light, and for some reason, I wanted to just put it right in my face. So I just put duct tape, and that's it. This I added later on. Added to this base. The only problem with that is, you see the spacing on this? So if I do put like a piece of steel, like let's say I want, to drill a piece of steel, there's not much space from here to here. So imagine the drill down to here, and then basically you got like probably like, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch of free space while you're doing this. Once you put the handles and stuff on your knife, you're like super close to the knife. But I like this thing. I like this little vise. I like holding the things that I want, so I can just drill it, I can just move it, and then and just keep doing in different spots. So I'll show you that too in a little bit. All right, so this is how I use the clamp. I just like level the piece of steel I'm using to drill into, and what I do is I'll drill whatever hole I want, and then after that I can move this back and forth or right to left using these little levers, little handles. And once I do that, I can just keep drilling in each place that I want to without having to like reposition the piece. So super helpful clamp on the drill press. Okay, so next up is files and sandpaper. So these are the files I use. I have others, but just to get the point across. I use these basically for the edges, just to take off all the scratches and stuff if I want to. Sometimes I don't. And I mean, because it just doesn't go with what I want to make. For the flat areas, you just want to use your belt grinder. Just go higher grits on the belt grinder. One of the things that you definitely need when you're using files and stuff is you want a file that will transition into whatever sandpaper that you're going to use. So this guy's pretty rough and this guy's less rough. I use this guy in the end to transition to sandpaper. And it's the same thing as sandpaper. So the way when you think of sandpaper, you want to transition from what I do is, let me show you. So I'll do this file and I'll transition to this file. So this file is rough enough that I can actually take a lot of material off. This file is rough enough so that I can actually get rid of the scratches this file makes. And then after this, 220 grit is a good transition to that basically gets rid of all the scratches this guy does. And then I go from 220 grit to 400 grit to 800 grit. So you have to think of files the same way you do as sandpaper. You want something that will transition, and you kind of double it. So just go double like I did with the sandpaper. 220, 800. I know files have ratings too, I think, but these are files I've had for an eternity. So I don't know what these are. I just found out that it just works out that way. They're roughly, this guy's probably, the same thing, like twice. This guy's twice as rough as this guy, I guess. I don't know how to explain that exactly, but yeah, same thing with the round files. I use this guy to get rid of all the materials like I need on these little areas I can't use a flat file for. And then this is the one I use when I'm gonna transition to sandpaper. So it's good to have files in that sort of way. When I use sandpaper, so your thumb is cool. You can do your thumb to do a lot of work. Just get sandpaper and just use your thumb to like shine up stuff to do what you need to do. But it'll never make, your thumb will never make a flat area. When you go over something, if something has bumps and stuff like that you can't really tell, your thumb won't actually smooth those bumps down. So what I do is I just get, so this is you just need something that's flat. So I use G10. And then I'll clamp this down and then just use this to just smooth everything over. And you'll see when you use a flat piece of material to sand, you'll see little spots, hot spots that need to be worn down once so you can actually start working on the whole surface as well, the surface as a whole. So after that too, when I do transition, like let's say when I transition to sandpaper for these areas too, what I do is I'll wrap this around like the bar I'm using, basically this guy. So, and I'll wrap it around the highest grit bar. I don't know how to say that. The least rough bar I have, I'll wrap the sandpaper around that, and I'll use that to do the areas I want to do with that. Whatever I was using my files for, I'll go over it with sandpaper, but I'll wrap the sandpaper around the files themselves. And you have to use and this is kind of obvious, I guess, but you have to use the highest, the least roughest file you have, because if you do mess up and you scratch your steel, then you just have to go back to like the lowest grit sandpaper you were using. You don't have to go all the way back to the roughest file to actually get it all out again. So same thing with the round bar. Just wrap it up on the least. You can just wrap this around that, and use the round bar so you can get everything nice and flat. You might want to use your thumb on certain things with just with sandpaper. And what I do is I fold it in half and I just go over it. But it's only when you don't care how flat it is, or you don't mind rounding out corners. So if, like, let's say if I use my thumb on this and I just start going, it will round out the corners. So if I wrap this around files or something flat, that won't happen. So yeah, that's a plus. Okay, this is just like a vise I use just for a lot of things, but like let's say for like the edges I was talking about, sanding those down and then filing them. I basically put this here in between these two pieces of wood and then clamp it down so I can actually have a nice steady piece that I can actually work on. You want to use wood or something, something that will clamp it down. You don't want to clamp it down with the actual steel clamps on this thing, because it will like indent your steel like no other. So yeah, this can be used for a ton of things. So yeah, so it's just definitely something to clamp things with that's super sturdy. Okay, so this is a little anvil I have, and it's made out of a railroad track. And so in general, from what I understand is, the taller your railroad track is, the more harder steel it's going to be. So if you have one I've seen other ones that are shorter. If you find a piece of railroad track that's shorter, you can still use it. But like, let's say you have two in front of you, I'll get the taller one just because it's going to be harder steel. So I just use this just for the pins when I put in the pins on the knife for the handles, and then sometimes when I put in the hand guard too, just something something hard to just smack against. So yeah, definitely like something you would use a lot too. Okay, so next up is these little clamps here. These are can't twist clamps, and these are 1 inch wide. So that's the maximum width they'll open. You might want to go a little bit, most people might want to go a little bit wider than this. For me, it's fine. 1 inch is fine because all my handles are less than 1 inch, the ones I've used. And even with the material that I use, this is 3/8 of an inch thick, and it still leaves me a lot of space to work with. So what's great about these is first of all, they clamp straight, into the material. They won't twist whatever material you're clamping down on. And second of all is they have a very small footprint. So I like using these for so when I'm waiting for the epoxy to cure, I'll clamp I'll clamp this handle down everywhere. And then also when I'm doing the shape on the front of the handle. So when you don't have a hand guard or whatever, you do this, you want both of these sides to be the same. So what I do is I'll clamp these pieces together off of the knife, and it gives me something like nice and sturdy that I can work with. I can work on this edge here, grind it down, or do whatever I want with it, and I can drill holes on it, and the little footprint on these doesn't get in the way. You can put it wherever you want. You can take them off and put on new ones while you're working on different areas. And they just, in general, they're really strong basically, and they're very small. So that's a huge plus. It helps. It basically helps do whatever you need to do, hold things in place, and also not get in the way. So that's the main thing I use them for. Okay, and last, this is the epoxy I use. So it's a G-Flex, and it's a West system. And just from like looking up stuff, things like that, I found that this is like the best, or the one I like the most, because it's not only is it like super strong, It's also slightly flexible, so when you are using things for impacts and stuff like that, it's not so rigid that it would just it would just basically crack or just let go of whatever you want it to, you know, to glue. So I found, and it's worked out fine. Found that this is like the best that I could find. And then just a note too that I forgot to talk about. This guy, the edges on these things are basically like little band saws. So if you are using it to grind on something, if you hit it with the edge, it will leave a line on whatever steel you're using. And this grinder here, I've gotten to the point to where now it has shifted back and forth so much, and I've pushed on it on the edges so much that now I kind of have like a bit of a bulge in the center. So that's a heads up too. I might have to replace this guy in a little bit, but so far I'm gonna continue using it until like until it kind of breaks down, I think, maybe. But that's one of the long-term use problems, I guess, is that it does have a bit of a hump now here, because these edges, since they are like sharp in a sense, they have worn down so much here. So if you just imagine, just this is worn and this is worn from like here to here from it just moving back and forth. So yeah, I think I covered everything. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for the ideas too on videos that you want to see. All right, bye. Okay, and here's a shot of like basically everything I talked about. So just to sum everything up, I guess, with just like a little clip in the end. Yeah. But yeah. All right. Bye.